They have heard from various lawyers internationally that there is some sort of obligation in human rights law on Gibraltar to introduce abortion, and then they've also heard that somehow the Supreme Court has obliged Gibraltar to introduce abortion. Neither of these things are correct, but yet they form the basis for the government's decision to bring forward this legislation. So the purpose of my visit and that of Dr. Miller was to ensure that other perspectives were put to them, that it's neither necessary nor advisable to bring forward this legislation.
The government of Gibraltar has been misleading the public here about the nature of Supreme Court judgments and this kind of obligation to introduce what is fundamentally an extraordinarily radical abortion bill. It's essentially a copy and paste of the English law with a few modifications, and in my work as a medical doctor I've seen the impact of this law. Now what this law allows is abortion for any reason in the Gibraltarian proposal up to 12 weeks, including sex-selective abortion if the baby is a girl. It allows for abortion for mental health reasons up to and during birth, in fact, if you look at the UK law. And so I think in those respects it's an extremely radical proposal, but also just the reality of it that I've seen as a doctor in the UK. We've seen babies being born alive and left to die.
There's no inevitability about the Supreme Court telling the Chief Minister to do anything in particular. The judgment was directed against Northern Ireland, and in fact in that judgment the judges made no order that Northern Ireland should introduce abortion. They discussed it certainly in the course of their judgment. But to say then that that decision applying to Northern Ireland somehow has effect on Gibraltar, making it a requirement that the law here needs to change, is fundamentally misleading. And yet that is the entire basis that the Chief Minister has brought this legislation forward on.
This bill is about abortion on demand for any reason. And when I asked the Chief Minister during my visit, I asked him explicitly, what is the evidence that Gibraltar supports this law? He cited absolutely nothing other than the fact that he said the Supreme Court in England required it. Now this itself is a deception. The Supreme Court requires absolutely nothing of Gibraltar in respect of its abortion law. But he said the only evidence he could cite for a change in the law, when I asked him if the people supported it, he gave nothing. He just said the Supreme Court requires it, which is itself a deception.